Hello and welcome to Attachment Maps. My name is Carl and I've been learning about attachment theory since 2018. I'm here to tell you things about attachment theory that no one else is talking about. Can watching TV help treat a dismissing attachment pattern? In Dr. Dan Siegel's book, Mindsight, he presents a case study involving Stuart, a 92-year-old attorney with dismissing attachment. Stuart, or just Stu, was a successful lawyer, but seemed emotionally distant. Stu's family encouraged him to seek therapy because they were concerned about how depressed and withdrawn he'd become after his wife's hospitalization. Now, if you're not familiar with Dan Siegel, he is the pioneer of something he calls interpersonal neurobiology. He's a psychiatrist, a UCLA professor, and is well known for his work in the therapy world. The brain. Siegel, like many other experts, believes that dismissing attachment is a condition that is associated with a dominant left hemisphere and an underdeveloped right hemisphere of the brain. The left hemisphere is associated with analytical, intellectual, ivory tower modes of thinking. It's linear, linguistic, logical, and literal. The right hemisphere is associated with raw emotion, autobiographical memory, and social nonverbal cues, and is more connected to the body. It's also the first hemisphere to develop in infancy. When these two hemispheres are both developed and collaborate with each other, Siegel calls this bilateral or horizontal integration. Now back to Stu. Siegel's goal with his client Stu was to stimulate neuronal growth in his right hemisphere. But Stu was almost a century old. Could Siegel really teach an old dog new tricks? Siegel believes the science of neuroplasticity, along with clinical work in neural rehabilitation, suggested it was possible. So Siegel set out to rewire Stu's brain. Siegel's a big fan of slightly corny acronyms, so he calls this process SNAG, Stimulate Neuronal Activation and Growth, which means Siegel would snag Stu's brain in order to grow new synapses, neurons, and thicken the myelin on the axons of his neurons, improving conductivity. The active mechanism of neuroplasticity is focused attention, repeated and sustained focused attention. What also helps neuroplasticity is regular aerobic exercise and novelty. Bear in mind that the ultimate goal of this intervention was for Stu to open himself up to emotion and allow himself to become vulnerable. Thankfully, Stu was on the same page and admitted, "I know people say they feel this or feel that, but in my life, I basically feel nothing. I really don't know what people are talking about. I'd like to know before I die." Methodology. Here are the 4 exercises used to develop and integrate Stu's underdeveloped right hemisphere. Exercise 1. Tapping into body sensations. Emotions are body-based. Only the right hemisphere maps an image of the whole body. Siegel led Stu in a body scan, a kind of mindfulness meditation where you focus on parts of your body and try to just notice sensations, tension, or pain. A body scan typically starts with the feet moving up to the calf, the thigh, and throughout the rest of the body. Since the left hemisphere is tied to the right side of the body, Siegel led the body scan on Stu's right side, starting with his foot, since that would have felt more familiar for Stu. After completing the right side, Stu tried to scan his left side, and after that was done, and here's where it gets tricky, Stu tried to scan both sides at the same time. And after that, Siegel led Stu in some interoception, becoming mindfully aware of his interior body sensations, especially the gut. At first, this was difficult for Stu, and he was feeling frustrated. But that was okay, and as time moved on, this became easier with practice. Nonverbal connection games. Since the right hemisphere is the seat of our social selves and nonverbal communication, Siegel used games to jumpstart these circuits. Stu practiced identifying and imitating Siegel's facial expressions to activate his resonance circuitry. For homework, Stu was asked to watch television with the sound turned off and no subtitles either. This forced his brain to stop relying on the left mode words and instead engage his right hemisphere's nonverbal perception. Exercise 3. Shifting from explaining to describing. Stu's third exercise involved imagery, which required him to move beyond just reciting facts and start stimulating the parts of his brain responsible for autobiographical memory. Instead of saying, "I had cornflakes for breakfast," Stu was coached to describe sensory details like the cool feeling of the milk carton or the dry sound of the cereal hitting the bowl. They also spent time describing neutral scenes in Stu's life, like the beach, his yard at home, and his last vacation. By focusing on sensory images rather than linguistic packets, he invited his word-smithing left brain to collaborate with his experientially rich right side. Siegel also gave Stu a book about drawing with the right side of the brain to further loosen the left hemisphere's predilection for control. Exercise 4. Journaling. Now, it's not clear if this was a part of the methodology, but Siegel mentions that Stu began keeping a journal for the first time in his life to record his sensations, images, thoughts, and feelings. Sometimes Stu would bring his journal entries in for them to both talk about. In his writing, Stu reflected on how he was changing, on the new world that was opening up to him, as well as how uncertain he felt about his ability to feel. But as time went on, he saw things in a new light. Stu said the key was adjusting to a reality that lacked the control and certainty he was used to, a reality where he could not control where the images in his mind would take him. So, what happened to Stu? By age 94, Stu reported that life had entirely new meaning. He proved that even after nearly a century, neuroplasticity allows the brain to heal and connect when we intentionally focus our minds. The great thing about these exercises is that they can work for people of any age and are easy to do even by yourself. Integration is, after all, the mind's natural state. If you're interested in learning more, or if you want to check out some suggested resources to help you develop your right brain at home, I've left a lot of resources in the description box. There, you'll find links to Dan Siegel's book Mindsight, a link to the drawing from the right side of the brain book that I mentioned earlier, facial expression tests you can take online, and a list of TV show and movie suggestions for the TV part of the exercise. It's going to be a working list of TV shows, so if you agree, disagree, or have other suggestions, please leave a comment and I'll consider adding them to the list. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell. See you next time.